Well, something a little bit different tonight. We leave our familiar haunts in Atlantic City, backstage in the casinos, and travel south to Stone Harbor, to Ocean Galleries, to meet the actress and artist, Jane Seymour. So good to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
I had mentioned to you a few weeks ago, our paths crossed once in 1995 at the television programming convention in Las Vegas. And back then we met at the CBS Pavilion, where it was all about Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. But today, 12 years later, it's all about Jane Seymour, the artist.
That's true.
Tell me a little bit about your art. It's beautiful, it's vibrant, it's very colorful.
It's what I love to do more than anything in the world, other than acting. I love to act, but it left to my own devices, taken away on vacation or doing something for me, I like to paint. And so painting it, first of all, it started out as a way of dealing with what would have been a huge depression. I went through a terrible divorce. I lost confidence in myself, in my marriage had gone. I lost all my money. And I was given a couple of free watercolor lessons, and all of a sudden, time just flew by. I went into this whole other kind of Zen-like place, and it just gave me so much joy. And then I never ever imagined that anyone would ever see the paintings, let alone buy them. But all the way through Dr. Quinn, I used to paint on the set. On every movie I'm on, even on Wedding Crashers, I was painting the whole time.
Wow.
So it's really become a passion for me. And where some people get addicted to substances that aren't good for them, I get addicted to painting.
Well, you had mentioned that your paintings they're colorful. There are a lot of children,
right.
Flowers. I see a lot of beach scenes, and they're happy paintings, but they didn't necessarily come originally from a happy time for you or a happy place.
No, and the funniest thing is that when I look back at the paintings I started out with, when I was really in the depths of despair, instead of painting dark, angry, bitter, empty, cold paintings, I painted serenity, warmth, joy. I painted what I was looking for in my life and what I found through painting. And I think, the great thing about painting is that it's your personality that comes through, and it's from my imagination as much as it's a subject matter that I may be looking at. It's the colors, it's the mood, it's the essence of who I am that comes through. And obviously I'm an optimist. Obviously I believe that somehow I was going to turn this around. And I think I have the ability to move on. When something's bad and someone's done me wrong or whatever, I don't hold blame. I just kind of look at it and I go, okay, there's another lesson to be learned here. And it's painful, it hurts, it isn't fair, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm scared, but I can paint.
If you were a musician, you'd be writing a country song about your life.
But you see, the thing is, I wouldn't be writing the country song about, he did me wrong and I hate him. Instead, I'd be writing a country song about, there must be love somewhere, and I think I can see it on the horizon.
Well, this happened to you about 16 years ago when you started painting, but I want to say you started painting again because you were painting as a child, weren't you?
Well, I was always a little handy with the paintbrush and the pencil. I could always draw things. I didn't really learn too much about painting, but I kind of got as far as I could have gone to university to do art. I mean, I was painting, yes, but nothing like what I'm doing now. But I then, from high school until the time I turned 40, when I really started painting properly, I used my artistic talents for embroideries and designing fabrics and designing homes and designing clothes and things like that. So I've always had a great interest in textures, in color, and in spatial relationships. In other words, in putting houses together and finding art and hanging things and finding fabrics that went really well. So the whole concept of putting together space was what I was really doing before.
I noticed that you kind of glossed over the fact that you had a few lessons and you started painting after you had turned 40.
Right.
That was almost a fortuitous experience in itself, because you had spent your last dollar to commission a painting of your children.
I
at the
did.
time, right?
I kind of knew that I was going to have to declare bankruptcy, which, by the way, I never had to in the end. But at that time, I was pretty sure that I would be penniless and have no home and have nothing the next day. And I thought, well, I don't think the bankruptcy people are going to be interested in a drawing of my children. So there was this artist called Tom Mielko who had offered his services at a silent auction, and I kind of put my name down there and I got to win that piece. So he came to the house to do his drawings of my kids and take photographic studies, and while he was there he saw the finger paintings that I'd done with the kids in their nursery, and he said, "Oh, who did those?" And I said, well, I did. And he said, they're very good. And I said, they're finger paintings. He said, I know, but they're really good.
So he saw something there.
Oh, he saw something there. And he said, you have talent, And I said, well, I haven't really painted since I was in high school. And he said, well, I'll give you some lessons. And that's what happened. This is a mixed media, watercolor, pastel, and newsprint. And what I've done here is I've done a floral, but underneath it I put newsprint, which I tore out. So it says you have to give, illness finds grace and purpose, crying is good for you, decision, 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 and European class. And this is something I did after I'd had a near-death experience, and I was so grateful to be alive. And this is really my expression of what I felt after I'd left my body, and I was so glad to live and not to die and not to go on. I said that I would never waste any of my time, that I wanted to give back to other people, and I also had to process nearly dying. So the whole idea of crying is good for you, that cathartic release was important. And this piece, I've raised a lot of money for charity with this one.
So you started painting, and what did you do with the paintings at the time? You weren't selling them. I mean, you weren't even thinking of showing them. This was just for Jane Seymour, right? Right.
So I started painting, and I thought no one would ever look at them. And then someone found out, someone was doing a book about actors who are also artists. Mm-hmm. And I'd only actually ever done 3 paintings in my life. And for some reason, they chose to publish my second ever watercolor, ever. And they published it in this book. And the next thing I knew, Corbel Champagne came and commissioned me to design a champagne bottle. And so I did, they just moved it. Well, it was the red hibiscus, and that became the image that I did for the champagne bottle.
Were you nervous about that? All of a sudden, here you are being commissioned to do a champagne bottle by a world-famous company when you really didn't have any experience doing that at all.
No, well, the thing was that they'd seen some of my paintings. By then, I'd done a few more paintings, and they liked my style. And I suppose, they could easily have said, we don't like that, we're not going to use it. And so I got very lucky. They loved it so much that, in fact, I think it was the best-selling one of that series, and it actually won an advertising award for best advertising. But the best part about it was that when they launched it, they gave me my first ever art show.
Wow.
And that was huge. And then Discover Card decided to come up with a credit card called Private Issue. And it's the first time that they had credit cards that weren't just saying the name of the bank. And so they chose to use one of my paintings for that. And they showed 3 of my paintings, including that one at the Guggenheim, when they did the big launch for the credit card, along with Ringo Starr and Flojo. And they auctioned off my original painting at the Guggenheim for $25,000. I nearly fainted. And the money went to Make-A-Wish Foundation, and 5 families benefited.
Well,
so it was amazing.
Your art has always benefited a lot of charities too,
absolutely,
hasn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. I always make sure of that. I mean, I'm donating things all the time. But please don't ask me. There's only so many I can ultimately donate. Right. But I also paint for causes. There's a series of Women in Red Dresses who are done to alert women and the population to the women's heart disease, which is the #1 killer of women, not breast cancer. You're 7 times more likely to die from heart disease as a woman today than you are from all the rest of the next 7 diseases that could kill you. So I just thought that was important. And plus I love red. And the whole idea of movement and dancers, and I did an African-American dancer, Asian lady dancer, a Hispanic dancer, and myself, and all of us in red dresses. So that was one series. I've just done a painting that we did an edition for Congress about the world's water crisis. I did a documentary called Running Dry, and I'm very involved with the fact that the wars of the future are all going to be over water, not oil. Right. And so I did a painting for that, which I'm very proud of. And, so I often paint for causes as well.
You started out working in watercolors. Yes. And you thought, well, this is going to be the easiest one for me to work. And it turned out that watercolors is one of the most difficult mediums to work in, isn't it?
It really is, yeah, and that's what I've been told. And but for some reason, I have a knack for watercolor. Although I've got a long way to go, I think. I have my own kind of a style that I do with watercolor, and but I think watercolor is the closest to the artist, because when you do watercolor, you can't go over your mistakes. There's not a lot you can do. With oil, you can paint over the whole thing and start all over again. So there's something very immediate and very fresh about watercolors, which I love. But I love doing oils too, and I really also love painting with a knife. So I really try a lot of different mediums, and people will come and they'll look at the show and they'll say, well, you know, these all look different. I mean, there's completely different styles and different subject matter. And I don't want to be the kind of artist that just finds one style and just does, you know, 30, 40 of the same thing. That's just not who I am as a person. It's not who I am as an actress, and it certainly isn't who I am as an artist. I always want to grow. I want the subject matter to dictate the style in which I want to portray it. And I'm always trying to take chances and trying something new.
You look at, anyone who looks at your art, you don't have to be an aficionado to recognize that there is influence there from Matisse, Monet, Chagall. Am I correct so far in that?
Certainly in my love of color, absolutely. Yes. And of course the pieces that I did in Giverny in Monet's gardens are clearly, you know, after Monet. But I kind of take off as well. You know, there's a lot of artists I love. I mean, I love John Singer Sargent. I love Mary Cassatt, you know, and you could say, well, she's influenced by Mary Cassatt because Mary Cassatt painted mothers and children. And you could say Georgia O'Keeffe because I paint, you know, large flowers. But it's not, I haven't looked at Georgia O'Keeffe and said, I'm now going to do a Georgia O'Keeffe painting. No, it's very much mine. But, you know, I think a lot of artists, you look at their work, there's obviously elements that you can discover in other fine artists.
When you began showing your art, and I believe that was about 14 years ago at various shows, was it difficult when someone would say, oh, I love that, I'm buying it, and I mean, that's your baby. And someone else is taking it home.
You're so right. I didn't want to sell any of them. They were all my babies. And then my husband pointed out to me that, you know, we literally, you know, couldn't just cover our house in my art. You know, we had to have some space there for some other artists. And you know, I discovered this wonderful process called giclée, where they're able to really completely repeat my painting. I mean, to a degree, to an accurate level that I have to go up and look very closely to make sure it isn't the original. I mean, there have been times when I've gone into an exhibition and I've turned to the lady that I work with, Susan, and I've said, wait a minute, I thought we weren't selling that one. And she goes, that's a giclée. And I go, oh my God. And what's great about that is that if I've sold the original and I really want to have that image in my house, I can hang the giclée, and I do. I mean, for example, the large flower portraits, the originals, some of them weren't even square. So when I did the giclée, I was able to turn them into a set, and they look absolutely spectacular on my wall. I mean, I've got all 6 of them up at the same time. I couldn't do that with the originals.
You said you were constantly painting.
Yes.
Anytime you have 5 free minutes, and today, you told me you were on the beach in Avalon.
Absolutely.
Painting.
I was on the balcony of the bar up there looking out, and I had my little digital camera with me, and I was taking photographs of people coming and going on the beach. And yesterday I was on the beach and I got some kids frolicking in the sand. And in fact, I just did a little painting of a little boy with a surfboard on that beach. I just finished a tiny little watercolor, but it's really cute.
And that will be sold during the show?
It will most probably be offered to anyone who wants it here at this show, because it'll mean more to someone at the show. But it's a beautiful little piece, and yes, I've taken a lot of I've got a lot of ideas that I want to paint when I go back, specifically from here. I love all the colored umbrellas with the sand dunes, and then there was this lovely bridge, and so you could see people coming and going, the sand dunes. And of course the lifeguard sitting there. And there's just a lot of color. I love that. So
that caught your eye.
That caught my eye. I'm actually thinking of doing I've never done this before, doing a series of maybe 4 or 5 smaller paintings, but it will be a panoramic view of that beach at that moment. But each one will work in its own right as a separate painting.
I noticed on some of the works here in the gallery, there are 2 different Jane Seymour signatures. There is a printed signature, which I'm guessing...
No, there's no printed signatures
it's not printed?
here. No, I never, ever print my signature. Every single signature...
But the signature, there are...
Because it's a brush stroke.
Okay.
Okay, if you try and write your name with a brush, you'll see what happens.
Okay.
Most people who sign with a brush usually just do a very short name. They'll put, you know, Monet, right? They'll just... And it'll be just very simple strokes with paint. If you're writing Jane Seymour, that's an awful lot of words and letters to put on there. So when I do it with a paintbrush, it's very hard for me to get the same signature.
Okay.
But you'll notice if I do it with a paintbrush, it's pretty similar. each one. So those, they're very similar. But if you see me sign it with a pen, no, it's a much more flowing.
Because
signature.
I know you had told me that a lot of the works here today are some of the older works from your collection, aren't they?
Some are older than others. Yes, yeah. That doesn't mean they're not as good. In some cases, I think they're better.
Let's talk a little bit about your acting career, because it seems that art is up here and acting is now down here. It used to be the other way around.
I wouldn't really say that. I mean, I did after the movie Wedding Crashers. Right. I've been doing a lot of comedy. So I had my own series, Modern Men, which I did 7 episodes for. I did In Case of Emergency. I did 3 episodes of that this year.
But you had to reinvent yourself as an actress,
right.
and
I've
discover
had to. And
comedy.
also, the other thing is that I've got so many art shows now that I'm booked on that I don't want to let people down. Although the art shows are always on the weekend, and I very rarely film on a weekend anyway, so it's usually okay. But I've been offered work that I really thought was not very good. So
it's tough to find leading lady roles too.
There aren't really, not for my age group. Very few.
And that doesn't seem quite fair, because you were, for many years, a leading lady. I mean, you started out as a Bond girl.
That's true, but you know what? I'm having a lot of fun playing characters now. I just did a movie that came out last week called Blind Dating. It's opening, it's just opened in 6 cities, and then it'll platform. But I think by the time your viewers see it, it'll be on video or on television or on the airplane or something. But it's a wonderful little movie. Starring Chris Pine. I'm very proud of it. Everyone loved it who's seen it. But we came out the same week as Spider-Man.
Oh
okay?
Well.
I mean, followed only by Shrek, and then what's that thing, the pirate thing? I mean, we could not have chosen a worse time to open a movie. But it wasn't just us that got buried. I mean, I think every movie that came out in those weeks, people go, what movie? Even Lindsay Lohan's movie, nobody even knew was there. So
amazing.
So it's a little bit crazy. I also have a book that just came out.
I was going to say, you also
Yes.
published a book recently.
I did, and I can show you in a minute what it looks like, because we have it here.
Okay.
But it's called Making Yourself at Home, and it's a wonderful book about how people can discover their own style and manifest it in their home, whether they're starting fresh in their home, or they're bringing things with them from their past, or they just want to change out the look of a room without having to completely redecorate. And it's been doing really, really well. It's very exciting. I'm on a book tour still for it. And what's fun for me is that it has a lot of my art in it. It shows me painting. It talks a lot about my personal life, about my kids, my family. And if you're interested in seeing my beach, where I live, it's right there in the book. So it's all based in Malibu.
There's a cliche, and we've all heard it before, especially as we get a little bit older. They say, life begins at 40. And I'm sure when you turned 40, you weren't saying, I don't think so. I don't know about that. But now, looking back, life did begin at 40 for you, didn't it?
It began again at 40 in a different way. I mean, I had never done a series television. I'd always told my agent I would never do it. And when I went bankrupt and had nothing and I had to feed my kids, I turned to my agent. I said, listen, just tell everybody, all the networks, I'll do anything. I'll do the weather if they'd let me on anything. And he went out and told the networks, and CBS came back and said, well, we have this little movie of the week. She'd have to sign for a series, but the chances of being a series are, we don't think so, because it's a woman in the lead. That doesn't work. It's a medical show. That doesn't work. It's takes place in the Wild West. That doesn't work. It's family values. That definitely doesn't work. And it's got dogs and animals and children and that was Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
Right.
And they didn't believe in it. CBS did not believe in it, even after I'd done it, and it tested higher than anything they had coming out that year. They retested and retested. They thought there was something wrong with their testing, until the man who had invented this whole testing scheme said that he'd quit unless they put it on the air. So they put it on opposite the Orange Bowl football game, and then they put it on the following day on the worst slot in television, in the history of television. It's called the Death Slot. It's Saturday night at 8 o'clock. And I hit top 10 both nights in a row. And that was it. 7 years later, I was still making them.
Not bad, huh?
And I would still be making them, but I think Les Moonves decided that he wanted to make programming that was edgy and violent. And
you know what? They'll go back to Dr. Quinn. They'll revisit Dr. Quinn one of these days, and you'll be back in series television again.
I don't know. No? I think if I go back into series television, I think it'll be doing something different. It's actually quite fun, I think, for me to come in and do what I did this year, to do an arc where I'll do 3 episodes playing the same character, because then I don't have to carry the whole show. I get to do all the fun stuff, and they condense it into 3 episodes. So it gives me time to paint, to do other
Go out
material.
and do shows like you're doing here.
Do shows like I'm doing here, write books. You know, we produce movies too. My husband produced Walk the Line. So we've always got movies we're producing as well. So I just, I'm a happy camper so long as I can wake up in the morning and be creative. If my creativity is then seen and enjoyed by other people, all the better.
That's a bonus.
It's a bonus.
Jane Seymour, so
Thank
good to see
you.
you again. Take care of yourself.
Thanks.